The worst mass shooting in Canadian history claims the lives of roughly 20 people. I'm Marco Perry. Welcome to the Perry Platform. A senseless tragedy unfolded over the weekend. One of the deadliest mass shootings in Canadian history took place. And actually, according to some estimates, it actually is the most deadly Canadian mass shooting ever. Period. There aren't too many words that we can use to describe such an atrocity. Currently, the death toll sits at around 19 people. The figure hasn't been 100% verified though, because this shooter, he moved around from place to place. There's a variety of crime scenes and the police are still going through each and every one of them. I will note one thing though before we go on. I won't be repeating the shooter's name on air. He deserves no form of notoriety. He should descend into the grave being remembered for nothing. He has lost the privilege to be honored in death. What he's done just erases all of the respect that he should be granted. His name will not be repeated on this show for this very reason. And at the same time too, some of these mass shooters perform their activity to create a name for themselves and to rebel against some cause. To grant them publicity after they've done that just fulfills their wishes. I'm not saying this guy wanted that because the details aren't out yet, but as a general rule, that's how I operate in this regard. I'm not going to shed light and further publicize this person. We're going to talk about what happened here, but to give some individual just claim to the event, that I refuse to do. There is also another secondary danger, which is creating a sort of figurehead or a martyr for whatever cause this guy was riding out for. To name him gives people who might believe in these same things a person to rally around. They look at him and say, this guy did what he did, and we want to repeat a similar act or some nonsense like that. To give them that person in their lives is just irresponsible on behalf of the media. So, let's move on now by simply referring to him as the shooter. So, this shooter, he went on a 12-hour killing spree. Just take that in for a second. He was able to move around the province without getting caught for half a day. That's crazy. He obviously had this thing planned out. It wasn't just him walking around willy-nilly. He would have got caught. The RCMP was on his trail, but still, he evaded them. And as mentioned before, he took the lives of 19 people along his path of terror. It's still fluctuating, and one factor that compounds this, trying to get an estimate of how many bodies there are, is the fact that some of these crime scenes were set on fire. Officers are still searching through the rubble and the ashes to potentially find more bodies. That's a possibility. It's a dark one, but it exists. If someone is missing right now, there's a chance that they're just laying in one of these rubble piles. It's truly horrific. And one of the victims of the mass shooter was actually an RCMP officer. She was a 23-year veteran in the forces. Her name is Heidi Stevenson, and she should be remembered. She leaves behind her husband and 2 children. This is true for all of the victims. They all had lives and they all had families. They all had dreams and aspirations. And to be arbitrarily cut short by these acts of pure evil is just appalling. Everyone is really the hero of their own life. Each of these people were living as if they had something to do, some dream to pursue, something to build, and it was unjustly taken away from them. That's just tragic in every sense of the imagination. And the second thing here that I should mention too is that life is unpredictable. You never know when a psychopath is going to show up and try to mow you down with a gun. Make sure you cherish your time in this world and tell the people who you love that you do love them. Numerous families now are going to have to continue on without that loved person, without that individual in their life anymore, and that's just the epitome of sadness. It's so hard to come to grips with that too, because it's not as if it was something that's justifiable, like a disease that just takes you away. That's nature doing its thing. It's hard to rebel against that. Some things happen because they were determined by other factors here. But this individual made a decision to just kill these people senselessly. He didn't have to do that. There was no valid reason for these deaths here. And at the same time, justice hasn't truly been served either, because this monster of a man did not live to face the courts. He died along his path of terror in a supposed shootout with the RCMP. He was given the easy way out. He's not going to have to live his life in jail. He's not going to have to live with just the aftermath of what he's done. His conscience won't get a chance to eat at him. Instead, he's just finished. He won't be able to be held accountable in the right ways via the system. Now, hopefully, there is some solace to gain on behalf of the family members from knowing that the shooter will not walk the earth any longer, to know that we're short one less fiend in this world, but still, I would have much preferred to see him rot in a prison cell for just the atrocities that he committed. Loss of life really is the greatest tragedy we can ever experience as humans. There is no reversal here. Once that's gone, it's finished. If you lose your job, you live another day, you can get another one. If something doesn't work out as planned, you can pivot and find something else. But life, it doesn't work like that. Once it's gone, that unique life is over. There really is no chance to reclaim it, and that's just a major defeat. I'm not too sure how you can even recover from a blow like that. These family members who still remain alive in the absence of their cherished ones who have passed away are going to have a tremendously difficult time coming to grips with that. It's just a bad situation all around for everyone. And the thing that gets me the most is that it was so needless. There was no reason to go about doing this. If you have a problem with something in the system, you're trying to rebel, you want to have fun, whatever it is, there's so many other ways for you to channel that energy productively. To go out into the world and to kill people, to go out there and just take the innocent lives of civilians, I'm not too sure what kind of frame of mind you'd have to be in to ever think that's a good idea. How jaded with the world do you have to be to even consider that as a possibility? These people largely are not related to whatever it is that you have an issue with, to whatever it is the motivation that has drawn you to this ideology, to this path forward. These are just innocent people going about their everyday lives, and now they become collateral damage, or maybe they were the intended targets. Who knows? Either way, it's just disgusting. Now, I have nothing but respect for the officers who put their lives on the line to apprehend the shooter. Clearly, he was a dangerous man. He was deranged, and he had a thirst for bloodshed. For you to get in the way of that hurricane of whatever it is, crazy emotions, that's going to take a lot of courage. It is easy to diminish the work that police do, given some of the more polarized headlines that we experience today, but law enforcement holds society together. When things go wrong, that's who you rely upon to reestablish order. Law, peace, prosperity, these things are made possible because we believe in the system. These officers here are the enforcement of that same system. When things go contrary to the norm, they're going to be there to correct it. They're going to be the ones putting their lives on the line to handle danger. Another officer was shot. He is apparently recovering though, and the lady I mentioned before wasn't as lucky. She didn't make it. She was out there in the line of duty trying to protect the other civilians there, and that is deserving of the highest level of respect. To forget to give the just desserts to the officers who are out here valiantly fighting for us, that just undermines the courageous work that these people do on a daily basis. Now, of course you can still criticize police officers, but to have an ardent hate for them, as I've noticed with some political movements as of late, it just makes no sense here. The aim is to improve our system. Improvement is always possible, but to simply bash on it for no particular reason, or to have an unrealistic aim or perception of what the force should be, that's just not productive. Now, this whole debacle started with a firearms call to the RCMP. There was an initial residence where things were going down. Several people in that vicinity were shot. So the police get called in, and they're trying to figure out what exactly was going on, so they try to block off that immediate area. They didn't know, though, that the shooter was mobile. He began to move around, and eventually, he was seeking further victims. One of the crazier parts of the story is that the shooter was dressed as an RCMP officer, and his vehicle looked like a police cruiser. How did he even get the uniform? How did he manage to decorate his car like that? We don't know yet, but it points towards one thing. It was a well thought out plan. This wasn't just something he did willy-nilly on a whim. He went to the trouble of getting a uniform, of getting a costume that came with benefits to him. If you see somebody walk up to you in a police uniform with a cruiser that looks legitimate, you will inherently trust them. The shooter was able to figure out that he could actually manipulate authority to his benefit. If his goal was to kill people, It's much easier to do that if they are subdued, if they are relaxed. If you come up to them and they're all riled up, ready to fight in a flight or fight mode, that might be problematic. They might actually kill you. But if you walk up to them and they recognize you as a protector of sorts, if they think that you won't do them harm, they're vulnerable. And this is what he did. He went around in the RCMP officer uniform in the cruiser, just wreaking havoc. That's insane. After his cosplay, though, he realized that people were catching on to him, so he changed vehicles at some point in the journey, and he tried to flee. Eventually, the police caught up to him. He was in a truck, I believe, at this point, and this was along a highway. The details fade a little bit here. It's reported that a confrontation erupted, and shots were fired back and forth between the suspect and the officers. The suspect then died at the scene of the crime. After all of this, Justin Trudeau extended his condolences in this time of sadness. He stated that such a tragedy should have never occurred. Violence of any kind has no place in Canada, and that is correct. He is 100% accurate there. This was truly a despicable act and did not have to happen. Nobody forced his hand. He made the decision to go out there and just kill all these people. For what reason? Maybe we'll find out one day, but the truth is, there is no justification for what happened here. Donald Trump also offered his wishes. He put out a statement that read, "The US and Canada share a special enduring bond. As friends and neighbors, we will always stand with one another through our most trying times and greatest challenges," and that's also correct. Now, this is a time where we should all put politics aside. This is higher than that. This supersedes these party bipartisan lines here. It doesn't matter if you like Trump or not. It doesn't matter if you like Trudeau or not. They are extending their condolences here. They should be accepted willingly. They're trying to sympathize. This issue just eclipses whatever political ideology you want to abide by. We should all be coming together right now to mourn collectively and to just condemn the acts of terror we've seen here. There is no reason to politicize it, to try and get a headline out of what Trump said or what Trudeau said, because it's just not appropriate. That's not the point of this here. Maybe in the future we can talk about laws about certain things, but now is not the time. It's just simply not it. You're allowed to be human once in a while. You can drop the party facade for a little bit. Now, there are some questions though that are left to be asked about this whole debacle. First off, what motivated this man? It's not clear right now. Understanding that can alert us to the types of things that we need to watch for. What kind of websites did he go on? What was he searching up? Where did he get these ideas from? What really motivated him to go out here and commit the greatest mass shooting in Canadian history? I assume it wasn't just one day he woke up and felt like it. It seemed like he had a plan. He had this uniform, he had the police car. Where did he get those from? How did he go about getting the gun? Was he licensed? There's so many questions here that come to mind. On top of that, how was he able to evade police for so many hours? He was able to get around for half a day, just wreaking continual havoc. Then it would also be helpful to try and understand if he had a method to identifying his victims. Who did he go after? Why did he do it? Did he know these people? Were they strangers? So many questions here that I believe will be discovered in the coming weeks and months as the investigators do their job. Now, here's a second question. Why did Nova Scotia not send out an emergency alert during this shooting spree? Global News reports that citizens are baffled by that. People in the community apparently had no idea what was happening. They didn't even know an active shooter was running around their immediate vicinity. Some residents had to find out by word of mouth from their neighbors and their friends versus a province-wide alert. The RCMP was asked about that, and they were basically asked, why didn't you activate a warning of some kind? And they had no answer. This was literally their quote. They said, "Oh, it's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you at the moment." Okay, so clearly they dropped the ball. Logically, an alert was warranted. There's no reason why you shouldn't have done that, because we see the consequences. Citizens had no idea what was going on. And at the same time, there really isn't an excuse time-wise either, because it's not like the shooting spree happened in 30 minutes and the guy was caught. He was moving around for upwards of 12 hours, but still, there was no warning. Amber alerts are sent out with very little hesitation. There are testings done that go out to everyone's phone when the government wants it to happen. In this regard, it's insane how nothing was done. We know the government can do it, but they chose not to. Why is that? Maybe they forgot about the alert. Maybe they were too focused on the chase. But we need an answer here. I think the best response would be we were distracted by whatever. It's a good idea, and in the future we're going to do it. But instead, as I'll point out in a few seconds, they gave the dumbest explanation possible. Now, first of all, stick with this. Imagine that you are a resident who has no idea what's transpiring around you, and you go out into the public just to come face to face with the shooter, and you die because of that. There is some responsibility on the government's front because they could have maybe alleviated that. They could have sent out a province-wide alert that would have told everyone to stay inside. Then these people may not have gone out to meet the shooter. It's just a giant mishap. Now here's the quote I alluded to a little bit ago. The RCMP really annoyed me extensively with their rationale here. They responded further to why they did not issue the alert, and they tried to justify their failing in an asinine way. Here is the direct quote. "We have relied on Twitter because of the instantaneous manner that we can communicate. We have thousands of followers, and we felt like it was a superior way to communicate the ongoing threat." Wow. I don't even know how hard I can facepalm at that. That's just crazy. First of all, let's just point this out here. Twitter is not the superior way to communicate an ongoing threat on a province-wide basis. Do you want to know why? Because not everyone has Twitter. As the citizens said in this report, many of them had no idea what was happening. Everyone, though, has a phone. There are far more people with a mobile device versus a Twitter account. If you want to reach the most amount of people, if you want the truly superior way to communicate, it would be an alert. That's just a fact there. I don't know what they're talking about, trying to say Twitter is the most effective way to communicate these alerts here. And you should not use the other methods because this one is fine. That's just stupid. Then we should talk about the other points that they said too. They say, oh, we use Twitter because of the instantaneous nature of the communication. And do you know what else is instantaneous? Sending out a message to everyone's phone, at least warning them that there is a shooter out here who is dressed as an RCMP officer. Do not go up to the police right now. Just stay home. There's a danger here for everyone, and we will let you know when he's been caught. This took a 12-hour time span. For you not to make sure that everyone knows about it is just a dropping of the ball of the highest magnitude. And now they're trying to justify it by saying, we put out tweets. Good job. You should have done more though. Twitter is not enough. And then they say, we have thousands of followers from Nova Scotia. Well, guess what? That's not everyone. That's still not comparable to just the people who have a phone. So, okay, so let's even back this up. So you have the hierarchy here. At the top of it, or at the bottom of it, with the most people, are those with a phone. And now some percentage of those people have Twitter. Not everyone. And now some percentage of those people who have Twitter are going to follow the RCMP account. You dwindle down the numbers as you go up the pyramid. And that's what they're trying to justify here. If you do not follow these police accounts on Twitter, which I suspect might not be normal, not everyone does that. You might have to rely on somebody to retweet something or send you something, or you might just not get it. And then you might not even have Twitter. Then what happens to you? You're left in the dark like these citizens here. Then you have people complaining that they had to hear from their neighbors about the shooter, that the government did not directly tell them about the impending threat. That's not how this thing should be going, especially when we know these alerts are readily available. We see all the Amber Alerts, we see all the testing being done. Now, a time comes up where it is called for, where there would be no complaints about issuing the alert. People actually wanted it, and now you don't give it to them? People complain about the Amber Alert. They say, we don't want it so much, but you just ramp that up. Then you have an alert that people actually call for. They say, give it to us, and you say, no, we'll use Twitter instead. Well, if Twitter is so powerful, why even have the alerts in the first place? If you're really telling me that Twitter is superior, stop with the alerts then. Why even have the Amber Alert? Just use Twitter. You catch yourself in your own idiocy with that suggestion, because we all know Twitter is not superior. So just drop it. This lack of responsibility and accountability is what bothers me. We all know that this was just a mistake. The alert should have been issued, so why don't you go out there and say, that's a great suggestion. For some reason, it went over our heads, it didn't happen, and we recognize that. This whole situation was a tragedy. It wasn't something that we were prepared for, and now going forward, we're going to make protocol to ensure these alerts go out. That would be the most appropriate response, to acknowledge, first of all, the issue, to second, say that you were wrong, and then third, to say, we're going to do better in the future, and here's our plan. This is why people are losing respect for the government and government organizations, because they won't admit to you when they're wrong. They will not admit to you where they can do better, and they won't seek to hear from you. Instead, over here, we have citizens telling you what they want. They want the alerts in this case, but these RCMP officers are trying to justify another method. They say, hey, forget the alerts, just take the tweets. That's what we want to give you. It can't just be a one-way communication stream. You have to hear the feedback from the people and take it in. Otherwise, nobody's going to trust you. The next time something happens, people will rely on themselves for info because they know you won't give it to them. That's not the most productive system to try and administer. Now, at the end of the day, this entire situation was just so unfortunate. So many innocent lives were lost, and there isn't anything we can do to get them back. I'm giving my condolences to all the families affected, to all the communities affected, and hopefully we never see violence like this again. And hopefully we learn something to help curb the frequency at which gun violence leads to deaths in the future. So, that now brings me to the end of our conversation for today. You can find me online at perryplatform.org. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a review and share. That'll help us grow. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.